All right, everybody, welcome back to the last episode of Media Pass first season. And I am so stoked on this guest, Matt Desousa, one of the best FPV pilots I know. But anyone who knows who Matt is already, they already know that he's insanely skilled with the sticks. But on top of that, Matt has a really creative eye. His color correction for me is something that sets him apart, makes him stand out. And on top of that, he's also super talented when it comes to taking photos. I personally have been inspired numerous times by some of his posts and stories on IG. It's definitely somebody you want to follow. Matt, how's it going, buddy? What's up?
Okay, so let's get into the thought process behind how I put together my office here.
And ever since I saw it the first time, I've been really interested in trying this technique out myself.
5 ways to instantly make better videos you can start doing today.
What actually constitutes a transition?
Oh, let's go!
Hey man, thanks for having me. Not too much, just a long day of work, but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so first off, we're doing this one pretty late in the evening, but we're making it work. So I appreciate squeezing this in. I know you're super busy right now.
Oh yeah, no, of course, yeah, no, it's we've been talking about it a bit, and with our crazy schedules, we had to try and line something up here, and yeah, I'm glad we can make it happen.
It's always tricky for sure. I was planning to do the whole first season of this podcast in the off season, like winter, and it kind of dragged on a little bit, as most of us can relate to, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm stoked that we were able to make this work for sure. So
Yeah,
we'll get right into. Sorry, you go ahead. No, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say I appreciate all the nice things you had to say too. Like, yeah, I'm also inspired by your work and the stuff you shoot with your handheld setup, and I've been following you for a while and just always have been impressed by the stuff you're putting out. So glad that we can both inspire each other.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. That's huge coming from you for sure. Yeah, really appreciate it. What are you working on right now? I know that's a hard question because you're working on so many things, but what are you working on right now?
Today I just got off a shoot for it's like just a movie of a week. Do you know what those are?
I
Like
think so, but confirm for everyone listening as well, and for myself.
it's like a smaller production sort of deal. Usually, it's like ranging from like Christmas movies to just like
Okay,
I don't know,
yeah.
random like like things you'd see on TV, basically just on the network. That maybe one-off shows, for example.
Yeah,
But
that's kind of what I thought it was. Yeah, no, that's sweet though. That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good set experience, and like the director working with today, he's like he works with Jason Segel, you know that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, works with him a lot, and it's just like this. The directors look at MOWs as almost like a spec ad, I guess, for us. You know how we will get together with people we want to work with at like pretty much no cost, and kind of like creatively, you know, have some freedom to put together something that could be used to get bigger jobs or clients, right? So it's kind of the
I think
same
that's
thing for them.
it's pretty common. I think like and it's always been common in the industry. I've heard, but I'm hearing more about that at like the larger level as well. Even so, it's interesting that I think it's like snowballing almost.
Yeah, it's pretty much like everybody has to do it. It's almost like a resume or show reel, right?
I think like the time in the pandemic, at least I know I'm saying in a personal experience here, allowed me to like kind of sit back and realize, okay, it's not about the money. I just want to work on stuff I'm really passionate about and want to be creative with, and surrounding yourself with people who want to be creative as well. And I think those projects are obviously not working for free in this situation, but are some of the best from my experience at least.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely good to be a big part of it. You know, it's cool how like small but big the community is at the same time. You know, like I feel like we all kind of cross paths at some point, but there's just like so many of us, and I don't know, like globally, it's really cool to be able to connect with others. And yeah,
100%. It's really cool how many people have. I mean, I'm not definitely wasn't first to the party, obviously, but how many people there are now. You know what I mean? From what you're talking about globally, for sure, but even locally, I've seen such a like growth in the creator community over the last 3-4 years, especially. That yeah, it's just really inspiring as well.
yeah. What do you think social media has a big part of that, or like what's your take on it?
I I think like social media definitely has a part in it because it plays into everyone's lives. But I think there's so many different ways to go about that. I mean, a lot of people view creative and like the whole like influencer avenue as like, okay, you don't really have to work very hard. You just get to sit on your couch and just make a video every now and then. So I feel like that attracts a lot of people. But then you go down the avenue of like videographer, photographer, and the actually passion of, okay, I just want to create, but I've kind of been stuck in another job my whole life. And now, for whatever reason, I'm going to jump and follow my passion. I think that's a little bit more common recently. And I think that probably, I hate to bring it up twice, but is because of the pandemic. And then also just the new generation, I feel as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, I used to work at the railway, like regular 9 to 5, and I was there for like 7 years and then got laid off during the pandemic. And for me, that was kind of like a blessing in disguise because that's what kind of pushed me towards doing what I do now.
100%. That's so super common. Super common. That makes sense. So, all right, when did you start and where did you start? Was it photo, video? Tell me the story.
I bought my first camera like just out of high school. It would have been maybe like 2012, but I like didn't. I used it for like a month and then didn't touch it till like after I got into FPV. So I got into FPV maybe 2018.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty early.
Yeah, I mean,
FPV wise, I mean,
I, bu- I bought all the parts like 2017 and just sat in a closet for like a year.
I know a little bit about FPV, but I'm nowhere near your guys' level or your level. But is that analog or digital back then?
Yeah, it was analog, and we weren't even using cameras to film. We were just, I
Yes.
built my first drone just to fly around with no camera, just like line of sight.
Just to
It's like,
just to fly. That's cool.
yeah, just
That's
to
cool.
fly and watch the drone fly. I thought it was, I don't know, cool to just see something you build fly, right?
It is. Yeah, I definitely understand that feeling.
So yeah, that's kind of where I started with FPV, and then mounting a camera eventually and flying with goggles was kind of like the next step. But I wasn't into filming at all for like the first year or two. I was kind of just almost just flying for fun, you know, with friends, and I got into racing as well that year. So that was kind of like the start of like building the skill level because racing is definitely one of the harder aspects to FPV. Just because it's very fast and you like require almost like a different skill set to fly and film with them.
For anyone who hasn't seen racing footage after this podcast, go ahead. Let's pause it right now and just go ahead and follow Matt. But go watch some of his stories and stuff like that of his racing. It's crazy. It's awesome. Like, I don't know how I could fly a drone like straight maybe around a corner or two, but racing is a whole other ball game. So it's so, yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah, it definitely looks crazy, but I feel like the best way to get into it is you do fly slow at the start and you kind of work your way up, right? It's just one of those things. It's like if you
Kind of
ever
like
played like
motorsports, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, like I feel like the best comparison is F1 because
Yeah. There you go.
you really have to memorize the track when you're playing F1. And
100%. You go
for,
slow as, yeah, just keep increasing your speed until you're comfortable and you
exactly.
memorize the lines. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I was at a buddy's place recently and he was playing F1, but he was playing with the driving line on. And I told
Mhm.
him of all the assists, that's like the one you should try not to use because it's like, it's almost like driving with GPS versus remembering the route you're driving, you know,
It
like
100%. You need to be able to
you're
close your
never,
eyes.
yeah, you're never truly going to remember the track if you're following the line that tells you how fast you should be going. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Telling you when you should brake. Like you should be looking at the signs, right? Because there's,
100%.
you know what I
I know
mean? And
I
then,
do.
because then
It's
you
very
come up with
daunting
your
at
own,
first, but
yeah, it's like you come up with your own braking distance, right? And then,
exactly.
I don't know. And like, then you learn what gears you should be in. You know, it's just like, it's crazy when you use the racing line, it
That's
takes away so
interesting that
many things.
yeah, I never thought about that comparison because, yeah, I mean, going through like the lines of some of the racing FPV stuff that I've seen you do, I guess if you go really slow, yeah, I could maybe do it. But,
Yeah.
and
So it's like a lot of
again, just like,
people,
yeah, it's interesting. That's a good way of putting it.
yeah, they just have to work their way up and it's not too bad.
So you're telling me you started mostly like with drones and then kind of picked up the other cameras roughly? Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened? That's very interesting. That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah, so I started with FPV and then eventually started flying with the GoPro, right? And then I met. Do you know Nick McDonough?
The name rings a bell. I don't think we've met, but it rings a bell.
Yeah, so he's like an Irish guy that moved to town back like maybe 2019, right? So
Okay.
back then I was like good at flying a drone, but I was no good with like color grading or even like knowing how to look at light or
Hmm.
just I knew lots about the drone, but nothing about cameras. And
Yeah.
Nick, um, he already learned how to fly FPV, and he comes from the camera background, right? So basically we became friends and he started teaching me about cameras and I was like teaching him more about what I knew with drones. So it was like a very good like exchange in terms of knowledge.
Hmm.
And then that's what he inspired me to pick up a camera and start taking photos. And, like the way he taught me, like he was my mentor back then. And like, I felt like he did it in a great way because he would show me something, right? But he wouldn't show me twice, he would just show me
Hmm.
once and then that way like there's no way I could memorize what his editing styles and whatnot,
Yep,
but it would
definitely.
like kind of give me some guidance and then force me to come
It,
up with my own style.
I think that's super important.
So
Yeah, that's a really
yeah,
good teacher, good way of teaching. Yeah.
so exactly when I look back on that, I like really appreciate like because I remember the first time he showed me something. I was like, "Yo, can you show me that again?" Because I don't really understand. He's like, "No, I can only show you one." And I was like, "Oh, that's so funny." Okay, I was like, "I better be on my toes." You know what I'm saying? And then
I think
down the road, you'll go
it's
ahead.
interesting though that I feel like that's the only problem with like YouTube University and watching YouTube tutorials is like you end. I know I'm speaking from experience because I had to stop myself from doing this like a few years ago. But let's say you're watching like a tutorial on how to edit a photo or something, you end up like mimicking that exact editing
Yeah,
style, whatever it is, and then exactly what you're saying. You're not creating your own style for starters, but then also it doesn't really necessarily apply because it's a different photo, different lighting, different everything. But yeah, I like that method a lot.
yeah, it's definitely like a good approach to it. And yeah, it's just like really nice to reflect on like down the road and maybe, like if I ever like taught someone else too, it'd be in a similar fashion, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's good
But
to. Yeah, it's interesting to hear. I'll note that one
yeah,
down.
but yeah, so yeah, basically I started shooting. I had my first camera was a Canon Rebel, and basically I started using that with Nick, and he kind of showed me the like how to shoot in manual, basically, because I was shooting with like aperture priority or that sort of thing back then.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then so then I started to learn like the triangle and a bunch of he was just showing me all the basics. And then what I thought was cool because he told me later on how he has taught a few people, but with me when he would show me something, I would like learn, but then like come up with something else or just like like I would take it and kind of grow with it. So he was very like
Hmm.
impressed with the way I was learning. And I think for me, because I've tried like I tried a bunch of different like careers or like forms of work or like hobbies throughout like my
Yep.
20s and
Life skills
nothing
and
really, yeah, just nothing really came as naturally as like working with the camera. So that was one of
it's
those things that kind of stood out to me like I should run with this.
yeah, that's a really nice feeling. I know I can relate to the feeling for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. I did not know that you picked it up so like I don't want to say recently, but yeah, like that's so inspiring to me to hear that side of the story. That's sweet. That's really cool.
Yeah, I
So,
think I was just so passionate about it, and it's just one of those things like when you really do love something, it doesn't ever seem like work and you can really put in like
100%.
a
Yeah.
100% without even realizing.
And you don't, yeah, and you don't feel like, yeah, it just simply put, doesn't feel like work. Yeah. I know the feeling.
Hmm.
It's late at night right now. We're doing a podcast talking about our passion. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So, kind of switching here. I've got like a bunch of questions all over the place, so I'm just gonna switch all over the place today. I'm trying to like ask questions that other creators or aspiring creators can find answers that are very useful and they can just take stuff from, simply put. So, if a client explains to you that they want a project, let's for instance talk about that let's say just like that water park FPV project that you did. I know a little bit about the project. You worked with a few other people, but let's just say a client explains that they want this project done. Where do you start?
Usually when a client calls me, I'll listen to what they need, like what they're asking for. Typically it's like, are they looking for just like a drone video, or are they looking for like content to like build a website, or like social media, like content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try to get a feel for what the end goal is with the
100% figure out exactly
yeah
where the content's going to be used.
yeah, and just see, like, I try to look at it from like a genuine point of view. Like, if I can help them make something worth their money, then
Mm-hmm.
I feel totally comfortable like talking them into it, and I know giving them my best advice. Usually, if
Because
it's
you're giving your best
you know
effort, right? So
yeah, it's just like if it's something where, I don't think, if I can't do the job well, I'll tell them like straight up, like, this isn't like a job that like I'm like the best fit for this, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I know last week I
I've
went
I've
to do a
done
tech
the
survey.
same. Yeah.
Yeah. So like last week I was doing a tech survey for, Zach Moxley.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yep.
So yeah, he sent me out to do like a tech survey for like some Van City commercial shoot. And then the DP and a few other, the director, they basically wanted me to fly FPV drone like through people on a dock, to like punch in on a magician juggling, and then track a water bottle flying into the sky, and then use the sky to transition to like another
Yeah.
location, right? And like, and then the next spot is like transitioning from the sky and going down on a person, like a crane, like the drone is going down in elevation, like
Yeah.
stationary, and then craning up. So it's like, that's not even an FPV drone. Like, that's like an Inspire or like a normal drone, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
even like the first shot is like, that's like a techno crane on like a track. Like, there's no way, like, I don't know, like the type of movement tracking a water bottle flying in the sky, that'd be like
Yeah.
ridiculous with a
Like,
drone. Like, that's not really, like, we would
I
be
mean, I
sitting
can
there all
race,
day.
but I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not, it doesn't make sense. Like a water bottle flying through the sky, like, you have to tell them straight up, like, that's not going to work. Like, that's not how these
Yeah.
drones
Well,
work. And, like,
we can
at the end of the
mask
day,
this one out and do it a little bit differently.
yeah, and at the end of the day, I told Zach, like, I'm not the guy for the shoot, and this, like, you should explain to them, like, they need other equipment or other types of drones and whatnot, right? So in the end, I like didn't get the job, but like I felt good about it because I'm not like trying to do something crazy that I know I can't do, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%.
But
And that's like, I do the same. And then it allows you to like, when you are going to focus on a project and you are going to really put your best effort in, because you know deep down that you can put your best effort in, it transitions into the confidence level and confidence of being able to put in crazy work and it turning into crazy content.
yeah, I just feel like, if you believe in like the objective of the client, and you feel genuine about it, I feel like in most cases people can read that, and that's like
Definitely. It's very
a good way to sell
visible.
yourself, just be honest with people and just be like genuine. And I think that will get you far, like I was talking to somebody on set today and they were telling me, like, at least in the film industry, he believes it's 20% skill, 30% knowledge, 50% personality, right? Like, he just fired his last like main crew member because, he was very talented, very, very skilled operator, but not a good attitude sort of deal, right? And that's just at the end of the day, a
100%.
deal breaker.
Just a heads up, folks, we had some technical difficulties and Dan's mic stopped recording for about 7 minutes, so you're going to hear him on the same Zoom audio as the guest for just a little bit here. Hang tight.
All right. So I've obviously seen you shoot some really cool projects over the years, from the commercial stuff to a lot of really cool personal stuff as well. What are your tips for people, again, starting out, to open doors to both levels of work?
So one thing I always recommend to people is like, do those cheap jobs and do those free jobs at the beginning. Like, I even still do them to this day, like years later. Like, for example, today, the MOW I did was for free, and it's like on a production, like everything like that. But it's just because the company I work for, they wanted me to go and like make a good impression with the director,
Which goes such a long way and can open so many doors. Yeah.
Exactly. And it just basically, he doesn't know much about FPV. So I've been like implementing like a conic system on my cine lifter so I can broadcast like my cinema camera footage like right onto like, you know, there like all the
Yeah, I
displays
saw
that
that. I
everyone.
saw that story. It looked
Yeah, it's
super
actually
dope.
it's just so important. Like I've found out recently, like they pretty much don't even care for you to fly if they can't see what you're doing. Like last
Makes
week,
sense, I guess. Yeah.
I was shooting for a TV show and we were on an ice rink and I was like flying FPV between all like the hockey players and stuff and everything was going great. But I was running my goggle feed through like a controller onto the monitor. And then we started having issues with that link. So I wasn't able to show what I was flying, like seeing with FPV. So we just had to just stop like that and move on to the Inspire because, you know, they don't care if they can't see it, basically, right?
It's interesting. Yeah, but it
Which
makes
is,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
to me, it's kind of crazy though, because I'm like, I can still get the shots you guys are looking for, you know,
Yeah,
just
and you
let
can
me
just
fly.
decide in post.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just like everything in the film world is just like, you know, bang, 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 right? Like they're there, everyone's set, and then you do your part, and then you move on to the next thing, or else, you know, everyone's gonna be running behind on schedule. But
So, what do
that
you?
yeah.
It's kind of like a tip thing again, but for people who feel like they want to create or can create, but they don't get chances, which we all feel like. I feel like we've all been at some point. How do you deal with that, or does that come down
I
to how you
think
deal with it as a creative, or is that like a personal trait? Because for me, I think that relates to like what you were saying earlier about the life skills, and like I didn't start. I worked as a mechanic for a while. Coming out of mechanics, going into videography changes my outlook on that. So how does it? Yeah, what's your opinion there?
So I feel like, yeah, like I was telling a friend the other day because they were saying how my life must be like, you know, better now because of, you know, what they see through social media and like, you know, what I do for work now looks exciting and fun. But I guess the best way to put it is when I had a 9 to 5, I felt like life was very consistent. I was never challenged much, you know, like it was kind of the same thing all the time,
The
which is
grass
good
is
and
always
bad.
greener. I always think about when I hear this conversation.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that like I wouldn't say life is any better now, but I feel like because I'm being challenged like usually on a day-to-day basis from, you know, all the things that we have to do to make it work.
I want to hear your answer, but I just want to cut in really quick. I want to remind you because I felt that as well. But positivity, I think, is like really key as well. So
Hmm.
I think I can't say for sure, but mine personally, my life is definitely better because of those days where it's like at least now I'm doing what I love. You know what I mean? On like a
Hmm.
long Wednesday or something. So I anyway, finish your point, but
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, I love what I do for work, you know, and I think in the end, it's going to pay off, right? Like I truly believe, like, you know, for the
100%.
amount of effort I'm putting into this, and if I just keep going at it, like, you know, it should work out. But yeah, like I think the thing is with this type of industry, I find there's peaks and valleys, right? So
Highs and
when
lows.
things
Yep.
are, yeah, when things are good, when work is busy, life is great, you know. I love working all the time. So if I'm working, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But you know, like say during the quiet times, like especially during like January, December has been almost every year the slowest point for me.
I
You
call it the
know,
off season now. Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of those things I used to stress about a lot, being like, "Oh, I need to be working. Like, how am I going to make this work if you know if I have these months where there's like not much happening, right?" But now I just try to work extra hard when there's work. Like, I pretty much never say no to anything unless it's something I don't believe I can do, or if not like something I really you know like don't want to shoot.
100%. Yep.
But like
You gotta
you know,
just up that motivation instead of I'm the same,
totally.
right? I love
But
working
it's like
all the time, but
for sure. And it's like, I don't know, I run into some people that say, you know, I don't want to shoot this because I feel like it's not like, you know, like I get it. Some people might not want to shoot a particular subject, but for me, like, you know, I'll take pretty much any job, you know, might not ever see it because I don't have to post on my social media. But if it's something where I know I can help a company, I'm going to do it. Like recently I had a company reach out and they are a portable toilet company. Like they set up porta potties at events, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
and I'm like, they told me what they were looking for, asked me like what the pricing would be. I told them my rates, and they were happy with it. And it's a well paid job, and I'm going to do it because I know I can, like,
100%.
do a good job for them. It's like
I definitely do.
but
100%.
it's like literally like people ask me what I shoot. I'm like, I shoot things from porta potties all the way to movies. You know what I mean? So it's like everything in
You don't
between.
have to
I don't give a
post
shit.
everything,
Like,
right? 100%, man. I know that.
at the end of the day, it's work. And I think coming from that background of working like a 9 to 5, like you said, like we enjoy like what we do for work, and we have that privilege. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you just got to work. If you're not busy and you have an opportunity to do a job that you might not be stoked about, you should just do it anyways. Because one, it's practice, and two, it's like maybe you'll run into a client or they'll have a referral to something that you do want to shoot, right?
Yep.
So
100%. 100%.
like,
There's so many reasons.
yeah, like I can recount lots of times where I do a job I didn't want to do, or did one for like no money, and it got me a big job later. So it's always like
Mm-hmm.
pretty much paid off every time. And I think, like as long as you're a reasonable person, if you can build on connections, it's just kind of like you got to roll with the momentum, right? So just try to remember that like every connection is an opportunity, and just try to work with that.
So, what's the biggest hurdle that you've overcome in your career?
I think when I was switching from part time, like going to full time,
Yep.
because after the railway, I got into trade school and I was doing HVAC.
Okay.
So I was like 2 years into that,
Mm-hmm.
and basically doing FPV and some camera stuff on the side. But eventually, I was making more money doing like creative stuff than actually going to work doing HVAC. So then transitioning into that, I felt like was one of the biggest hurdles,
It's
because it's like
a
a
imposter syndrome moment for sure. At least for me, it was.
yeah, and it's just and I just find like I have a good career path right now, or like then HVAC's like
Yep.
it's a well paid trade, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very stable as well. Like it's also challenging.
Reliable.
Like
Yeah. I know
yeah,
all the things. Yeah.
yeah, so there is a lot of pros to it, but the work itself, like, there's things I liked about it, but it's not like the same kind of passion I have for drones and cameras. Like a few guys I know in the HVAC industry, because it is challenging and can be exciting. Like the people I know that do it for a living are passionate about it. So it is possible for that trade to, I guess, feel
100%.
like,
And it's the same.
you know,
It's that you're saying the same things I think about mechanics. So I'm
yeah, so
very
it's like,
familiar with
exactly.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I have a good option here, and then I got to sacrifice that to like fully commit to make this happen, right? So I think that was
Mm-hmm.
probably the biggest hurdle for me. But
I'd say the same for me, actually. Yeah, that's a really good answer. I think anyone who's gone through that is like, or can just nothing but have sympathy and compassion for that moment, because it's a really big hurdle to jump. And am I really going to do this type of thing? So yeah, it's interesting to talk about in the past tense.
for sure, for sure.
How do you like working on bigger teams when you do, and being able to focus on one specific role versus taking on a project by yourself and doing everything?
I
One
honestly
man
love it.
band.
I love it just because like FPV is kind of my strong point, and I feel like like when I go on a film set, I'm very like respected because I'm know exactly what I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like I just feel very confident in like my knowledge and my skills. So like, whereas I would say in the other areas of like like ground camera work, or like running a gimbal, or like your handheld stuff, like that to me, I'm like, it's very like, I'm new to that and it's kind of foreign. But I can sometimes understand how you do certain shots. Like I can piece things
I think
together,
that
but I'm not.
confidence is so important because it
Hmm.
translates into, I mean, it's the definition of the word, but just like your confidence in the task at hand,
Yeah,
especially in something like FPV. If I can say from my own experience, if you don't have confidence doing a certain line, it's obviously going to look very different. So
for
yeah,
sure.
that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just at the end of the day, like I love just handing off footage, going there, shooting, and handing off footage and leaving.
Mhm.
I don't have to really look at it. And like, but
It's not something I do very much anymore, but that's a beautiful process.
yeah, and it's like when I look at it from a financial point of view too, like those jobs are pretty well paid. And,
Mhm.
like the stress for me is like, I find where I excel, is in, I guess, like higher intensity situations. I can stay pretty calm.
That makes
So,
sense for an FPV pilot. So
yeah, and it's just surprising, like how many people I know that like, have a hard time keeping their cool, but it just like totally works against you as soon as you start getting like frustrated or like having emotions in the
hot-headed, yeah.
picture. Like, yeah, you can't fly the same way, or you can't think or process things at the same rate as you could if you're out. Right?
Level-headed, yeah.
So
Definitely makes sense.
yeah,
Having
like
flown a little bit of FPV again, that definitely makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I find like, and also too, like, especially on bigger sets, if you're calm, that shows confidence, but
Yep, definitely.
if you're stressing and freaking out, like you don't even have to have made a mistake yet. People just assume you're making a mistake, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think that's like pretty key. It's like try to always keep your cool, and like in any situation that might seem awful, just always remember it's fixable. As long as somebody didn't die or something like that, like anything
I
can
think
be
that's just a
fixed.
life
And
skill for sure. That's not even anything to
yeah,
do with being creative. Yeah, I think that's just a
but
life
like
skill.
you wouldn't believe like how many people, like like someone I was working with on set today, like he's very like experienced and everything, and basically like we were having an issue with a cable, and he was just starting to get stressed, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
don't worry, there's someone here, I bet, that will have this cable. Like we
Turns out it
just
wasn't the cable he's mad about.
no, it was the cable. We just had to get a different
I
one from
know.
some. Yeah, but it's just one of those things. I'm like, okay, just take a couple breaths. We can find it later. It's not like, don't let this
No,
get
I
in the
think
way
that's
of the
a
day.
really important skill to have in this environment and industry for sure. And as you were saying before about how it's not just about the like creativeness and it's all about the personality. Yeah, I think it's not all, but I think it's a huge part of it that yeah, definitely is something that people value.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, just like treating people well in general, like, being polite. Like that's really done well for me. From small jobs to big jobs, like I just find like being well mannered is very
Treating
important
people
too.
how you want to be treated. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's just that's like I don't know. I feel like the foundation to like having good
again, it's a
business.
life skill.
Like
I think these are. Yeah, I definitely think that's super important, and it's not necessarily. I can say with experience, it's not something that I have done my whole life, but having implemented that within the last 5 years, I definitely think that that's very important as well.
mhm,
What's
yeah.
something that you think that you can improve on?
Mm, I think there's a lot of things I can improve on, but let me try to think of a good example. Because the way I look at it is, we can always improve on something. There's nobody that's
I
just
think I asked that question just kind of like it's like almost like a trick question because that's
yeah,
the answer I secretly hope to hear. Because if you asked me that, I would say everything. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean the one thing I would like to improve, like my goals for this year was to improve like my confidence and skills of flying and inspire like dual op.
okay.
That's where I'm piloting the craft and I have a camera operator, you
I've
know.
seen a lot of, or from my perspective, a lot of your stories with the Inspire stuff. So that's seems like it's going the right way, considering we're just finishing the first quarter.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I feel is so important for the direction I'm headed, to be more confident, better with that type of flying. So,
hmm And just that
um,
equipment and software and
yeah,
the tech in
exactly.
general.
So I feel like that's been going well so far. And another area I was hoping to improve on this year is like shooting handheld video. Like I've always been very inspired by handheld video or just the shakiness. I think maybe because I come from like an FPU background, but I like the energy, right? The
hmm
dynamic. Like I like it when my brain can't figure out quite what's going on, right? Like those are my favorite kind
I'm
of
a fan
shots.
of the handheld
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, that's
exactly.
that makes sense.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm
yeah,
happy to give my tips at least whenever, man, but you got to give me all your tips as well about FPV because I still
yeah,
find
for
it just
sure.
so I just find it so like, how the hell do people do this at that level? That's, I guess, what goes to wrap my brain around it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It is like for me one of those things, I guess, because I've been doing it for a while, and when you're good at something, you're like, like whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Like,
It's
but
just
then it's
comfortability,
a
I guess.
nice,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice when people do appreciate it. So thank you for
I
appreciating
still
it.
am,
But
yeah, it's still very impressive. Like when we did that GT3 video and we just pulled up, you just pop out the drone, just start looping the bridge, just warming up.
yeah,
I'm just like, oh, fuck off. Like, all right.
whatever happened with that video? Did you finish it?
Yeah, no, it's up, the short docs on YouTube and then the little promos on Instagram still. It's one of those projects where I'm looking back on it now and I'm like, oh, I wish I could recolor correct this, but the short doc I'm still happy with for sure. So
Okay,
I'll resend you that link for sure.
you'll have to link
I'm
me.
stoked on the FPV stuff and that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I maybe saw the stuff. I definitely saw the stuff on social media, but I haven't seen the short doc yet.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. It's cool, man. It's one of those projects where just do it because you love it and do it because at the end of it you're going to get so much out of it. And I did. And I got so much practice and would always
Yeah.
recommend just taking on projects like that.
Yeah, it seems like when I look at your stories, you're always traveling, and like I'm always stoked to see the work you're doing with like Formula Drift and whatnot. So
Yeah,
good
man,
job on
I'm
that.
counting blessings over here. Well, thank you very much. Obviously, I haven't been. It's been the off season for the last few months, so I haven't been traveling as much. But the next few months are going to be a lot of travel for sure. But it's exactly like what you're saying about FEU, man. Just keep grinding. You know what I mean? And just eventually things will start coming to fruition, hopefully. And yeah, I mean, just put in the work.
Yeah, I
How
think
do you how do you deal with the highs and lows though of inspiration? Because that's something that is kind of like related to that, I guess, for me at least.
yeah. Well, that kind of leads into what I was just about to say. But one of my friends, Tantigo, his Instagram handle, Keen Luong.
I don't think so. No.
Oh, okay, he's like a really good like VFX, like really good FPV, a very good like cameraman, like all in one. I'll send you some of his work, but
Yeah, definitely.
um,
Always good to know a
he
VFX person.
he's actually never reached out to clients. Like he just believes in like working really hard and developing your craft, and
Hmm.
just trying to be different from others, right? Like trying to stand out essentially. Um, so he told me like what I try to implement for the highs and lows is, during the highs, ride them out and work as hard as you can. But during the lows, try to work on yourself and like how to like improve your work, because
Hmm.
that's your best bet in attracting new clients or upping your like to the next
Always be
level of
learning. Yeah.
clients, right? Yeah, it's just like how can you improve your work, right? Some people will spend a lot of energy and time reaching out to clients, and I hate it, so I don't do that often either. I like
Yep.
really try to implement like his method of like, hey, you know what? Like I got a bunch of free time coming up. I'm gonna try to do a spec ad with some friends. Let's get like a really cool car and like some guys that I enjoy working with, and let's make something cool. And then I'm really blessed
See
that I
what
have
comes
like a
from it.
little,
Yep.
yeah, and I feel like I'm very grateful to have a bit of a following on Instagram, because usually when I post something, more often than not, somebody will hit me up after for work, be like, oh, like
Hmm.
I like this video you just posted. Can we work together or something? Right. So I always try to like be more active on social media, I guess, if like I'm having a bit of a slow period, or like just try to go down different avenues of like getting your work out there. Right. So,
That's very similar to the way I approach it as well. That's interesting.
yeah. So whether it be Instagram, YouTube, or whatever you feel is the best way to show your work, I think that's like really key, to kind of keep your mind busy and like your skills, like I guess, intact. Because sometimes I find if you let things go for too long, you start to forget things, or I don't know, you're not developing as much.
100%. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well in the off seasons. There was a point during
Yeah.
the pandemic where I was like, how do I pick up my camera? Like, how do I, like, it was like 2 weeks or something of not using it. And I was like,
Yeah. For
ISO?
me,
Like,
it gets scary if I don't like rebuild a drone every couple months because I
yeah,
find I
it just
do
starts
start to
shaking.
forget. Well, yeah, we're just more like I'm like, oh, how did I tune it that way, or how did I? There's like a like I'm very picky with my drones, so I'm very
Hmm.
like precise with the way I tune them, and I guess my settings and whatnot. So sometimes, like if it's been a while, it's hard for me to remember everything. But
100%. I know it's not the same as like real life, obviously tuning on cars, but there's a lot of tuning that goes into sim racing. And when I like every year when F1 comes out with a new game, I everyone's all excited, but I hate it because I have to retune everything.
um,
And it's just like,
that's
all
so
right, guys, see
funny.
you in like a month and a half. Because I'm just sitting
Yeah,
on
yeah.
practice. Like, I'm so particular about the way it has to feel because of probably the same reasons, right? So it's funny.
Hmm.
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I'd love to get into sim racing someday.
Yeah, it's a whole can of worms. I mean, at the level that sim racing and technology is at now, it's a whole can of worms, that's for sure.
Yeah, I used to have like a Fanatec setup with I guess like
Nice.
an e-brake and a 6-speed shifter and things like that, and I would drift and I would put on the VR goggles and just drift for hours. You know,
That's what
like
I
I'd be
haven't done is the VR goggle attachment.
oh,
That's
dude, it's
huge.
super
Yeah.
sick. Yeah, just because like when you're riding someone's door, you can be like looking inside their
Yeah,
car
it's just
basically,
game
or like
changing.
yeah, or if you're like in a train, you're like looking ahead and then you like look behind you, like see the boys with you. You just get so hyped.
That's
You're like,
so
oh,
sick. Yeah.
we're all door to
Just
door, dude.
losing it in your living room. Like,
Yeah, dude. I would just put on music and like get baked and then drive for hours. Like
yeah,
it
you're
was
just literally
like
living the dream.
I
I might have to pull the
kind of
trigger on the
break.
VR.
Oh yeah, it's good, man. If I were you, I'd just look up like one of the older Oculuses or something because
Yeah,
that's
that's what I've heard.
totally
Yeah, the
fine.
Oculus ones. Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah,
wait,
but
very similar topic. Tell me about your car because I don't know if everyone listening knows about your car, and I'm talking about the Supra.
oh yeah, yeah, it's my baby. I've had it like for about 12, 13 years now. I got it just after high school. It was like my second or third car. I remember watching Fast and the Furious and being like inspired and buying a Honda Civic and getting all stoked about that, right? But then
Like
down the road, I
everyone.
realized, yeah, and I never realized how much money you had to dump in a Honda to make it fast, and like
Yeah.
what I learned what front wheel drive was, and all these things, and
Yeah, been
yeah. So
there.
after a couple of years, I was like, my buddies were getting into Toyotas. Like a few of them got a Toyota Soarer or like MR2, and
Yep. Nice.
I'm guilty, and I like the Supra, so I just like had to pull the trigger back then, right? So
So
um,
clutch.
yeah, super lucky. I bought mine for like 10K back in like 2011, and it was like, in mint condition. It was an automatic, unfortunately, but that's why it was so cheap. But twin turbo, had most of the good parts, and over the last like 10 years, I blew up an engine, rebuilt it, and put like rebuilt the transmission, like race brakes. Like the car's fully built now, and will
It's
be
mint. Like it's so
yeah,
nice.
it's. I mean, like it's got its imperfections, but for
It's
me,
perfect though. I love that. It's
yeah,
not like it's not meant
it's
to be a dealership
exactly.
show car, you know what I mean?
It's a car that I'm not super worried about parking in a lot because the paint's like 30 years old and it's not perfect. But the one thing
But
I
the
do
best
care
part is
about,
it's still mint. Let's
yeah,
just
I
make that
mean,
clear for the listeners. It's
yeah,
still
yeah,
like
it
it's
is,
10
it
out of
is.
10. Like anyone who sees
It's
this thing wants it. So
yeah, thank you. For me, it's the wheels. Nothing can happen to the wheels.
the
That's
the
that's my
brakes
main
too, man. I
concern.
didn't see it before the upgrade, but I
Yeah,
love a nice
they
brake setup.
were. I just basically put in the twin, like what should have been in the car the entire time.
Yep.
Because back in the day in Japan, you could select what parts you wanted on your car, and whoever
Mm-hmm.
ordered my Supra back then picked
So sick.
like Altezza brakes, which is like
Probably just fighting the
not.
bank account.
It's just not. Yeah, it's just not suitable for a
It's
turbo
not
car,
enough.
right?
Yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah, like in the rain, I'd hit
It's
the
not
brakes,
enough,
and then
Dad.
yeah, it would just take forever to stop. but now it's quite good, and I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, that thing is so sick. So make sure you go take a look at that, everyone. Talk about nature, and talk about going 4x4ing and everything to do with that and your Jeep.
Oh yeah. So that's been a huge, I guess, hobby and passion of mine as well. It's kind of something that helped me get into the creative industry. Basically got into off-roading right, but I guess a few years before COVID, right? But then when COVID hit, that was like my main source to get out and go fly like somewhere cool, like in the mountains, and try and get footage to show people who are like in lockdown, like what's out there sort of deal, right?
This is the world.
But that, yeah, and that kind of like led me into my first few jobs. With like a couple off-road shops or companies, or like merchandise brands, things like that. Yeah, they were like my first clients basically. So I'm very grateful for like getting into off-roading and making those connections like through a hobby. And
again, just putting yourself out there and committing to, it's not even like just committing to creating content. It's like, by the sounds of knowing you and by the sounds of what you're saying, it's just like having the passion there and then following the passion and just see what happens, right?
Yeah, I feel like when it's like natural and organic, like when if you're shooting something you already like are passionate about, like like you're gonna know it better than most, right? So you might be able to tell a better story or see like a better perspective, right? So I think that's also like very good for if you're looking for inspiration, just like try to think back to other hobbies or interests that you have that you could maybe connect the two.
Definitely. I think if anyone's trying to think of like a niche or avenue to go down, like a sub avenue, then that's definitely the way to do it for sure. At least that's what I did. All right, Matt, it's time for the rapid fire questions. What was your first camera?
It was a Canon Rebel T3i, I think was the name.
And if you had one focal length to choose to shoot with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
My 50 mil 1.2.
I'm toss up between 50 or 75 for me.
What's
your favorite movie?
Most recently, I would say Dune 2. That was unreal.
I've heard nothing but good things about that. I haven't seen it yet. I really want to see that.
Oh, dude, you gotta watch it in theaters. Like, don't waste it watching it at home. You need to see it in IMAX for sure. Like, one of the best visuals in audio movies. Like, the story's whatever, but the cinematography is unreal.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll make sure to do that then. I'll take your advice there. I trust your input. Who's your favorite director?
That's a tough one. I would say probably. Let me see. I would say probably Denis Villeneuve. That's the guy who shot Dune, and he also did Blade Runner. Like, it's very like I'm just into that kind of look right now.
Yeah, I didn't know he did Blade Runner as well. That's cool.
Yeah, I just like his style a lot, and I think one cool thing is that for Dune 2, the budget, he made the movie for like 180 million or something like that, whereas most movies on average cost about 200 million, and this movie looks way better than anything in that range. So people are like, blown away, because Avatar, I don't know how much it costs, but definitely quite a bit more, things like that, right? So I just think, that is impressive in itself, and much of Hans Zimmer. Yeah, so just like, I think it's really cool. Like they say it's like a passion project between the two of them. So I just think it's cool that he's like collaborating with a legendary musician like him. So I don't know, there's like a lot of different things that just I think from a creative perspective is really good. And from what I've seen, like, like BTS or interviews, he seems like a very like chill, like laid back kind of guy. And that's like, if I was gonna work for a director, that's the guy I'd like to work for.
There you go. That makes sense then. What's your favorite travel spot?
I would say in the recent years been Mexico, particularly Mazatlan, because I've made some friends down there and I enjoy surfing now, and that's kind of been like one of the spots I'll go back to every year.
Okay, what's your favorite time of day to shoot?
I would say golden hour, either in the morning or in the evening.
I'd have to agree for sure on that one. What's your favorite backdrop? Nature or city, or
Yeah,
What's your favorite backdrop?
I would say nature, just because there's so much variety, and especially for FPV, like, you can really do a lot with nature.
That makes sense. So this one, I mean, you can answer it with FPV or photography, but what ignited your videography bug in under 5 words?
That's giving the sense of flight, or like I feel like with FPV,
Okay.
it would be like, yeah, that's like, I want to provide the feeling of flight.
It's incredibly hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's just like
of flying FPV
it's like,
for the first time, or like properly the first time.
that was like what got me started in the first place. I just wanted to show my friends what I was
That totally
doing
makes
with my
sense.
drone. Like,
Hearing
I'd be
your
like,
story.
it's just, I just want to show what it is like to fly. That's like I guess the foundation to it all.
Okay, and if you won the lottery today, would you keep creating, or would you retire and put the camera away, or would you always keep flying?
Yeah, I would definitely keep creating. I would just fund some really awesome projects.
You just not have to worry about the bills, right?
Exactly. Hire all their friends and get the craziest subjects and put together the craziest videos.
Well, we're almost there. All right, man. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm not going to take up any more of your time because, you've probably got a super busy day tomorrow and you've got to get to sleep as well as I do. But yeah, absolute pleasure. And I'm so grateful for giving me the time. Everyone listening, go follow Matt. Matt, give me your plugs. What's your handles?
Just my Instagram is matt.desousa, and you can see most of my work there, or my website's linked to it as well if you want to check out more of my commercial stuff.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Matt. And yeah, man, absolute pleasure. Have a great evening. And thank you so much for listening, everyone. Yeah, awesome.